The deep space research vessel Horizon's Edge drifted through the cold darkness between stars. It had been traveling for 7 months, far beyond the edge of known space, searching for signs of intelligent life. Dr. Lisa stood at the observation window, her coffee growing cold in her hands. She had spent 15 years studying alien biology, but she had never actually met an alien. None of humanity had. They were alone in the universe, or so they believed. The ship's alarm changed everything. "Contact," said Danny, the ship's engineer, his voice tight with excitement. "Something big just dropped out of faster-than-light travel, about 200 kilometers off our port side." Captain Holt was on the bridge within seconds. He was a calm man, the kind who never raised his voice even in crisis. He looked at the sensor readings and felt his heart beat faster. "That's not a natural object. That's a ship." It was not just a ship, it was a fleet. 12 massive vessels hung in the void like sleeping predators. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered in what looked like armored scales. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like sharks or wolves or anything else that evolution had designed to kill. Lisa joined the captain on the bridge. "They're scanning us," she said, reading the data on her screen. "Very thorough scans. They know exactly what we are now." "The question is what they are," said. They found out 30 minutes later when a transmission came through. The Universal Translator, a program designed to decode any language given enough samples, worked faster than anyone expected. The alien language was harsh and growling, full of sounds that human throats could never make, but the meaning came through clearly. "You have entered the territory of the Dominion. Identify yourselves or be destroyed." Looked at his crew. Danny was pale. The security officer had his hand on his weapon. Amy Tran, the ship's medic, was gripping the edge of her console. Only Lisa seemed calm, her eyes bright with wonder instead of fear. "This is Captain Holt of the human vessel Horizon's Edge," he transmitted. "We are explorers. We come in peace." There was a long silence. Then the response came, and this time there was something like curiosity mixed with the threat. "Humans, we do not know this species. You will come aboard our command vessel. You will be examined. If you resist, you will die." It was not much of a choice. Lisa volunteered to go first, refused to let her go alone, so he and Danny accompanied her. They took a shuttle across the gap between ships and docked with the largest vessel. The airlock opened with a hiss of pressurized air. Lisa had seen many strange things in her career. She had studied creatures with 6 legs, creatures with no legs, creatures that lived in acid and creatures that breathed methane. But nothing had prepared her for the. They were huge. The smallest one in the greeting party stood over 8 feet tall. They walked on 4 powerful legs, their bodies covered in scales that shifted from black to deep purple in the light. Their heads were broad and flat, with 4 eyes that glowed like molten copper. When they opened their mouths, Lisa saw rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. These were predators, apex predators. Everything about them screamed danger. The lead stepped forward. She was female, Lisa somehow knew, and old. Scars covered her scales, evidence of many battles survived. When she spoke, her voice was like gravel scraping against stone. "I am War Mother of the Third Fleet. You are small, you are soft. You have no claws, no fangs, no armor." She leaned closer, her 4 eyes examining Lisa with cold interest. "How has your species survived?" Lisa smiled. It was automatic, a human gesture of friendliness. She did not realize until later that showing teeth was a challenge display for most predator species. But did not attack. She tilted her head, confused. "You bare your teeth at me, yet I smell no aggression. You face a predator, yet I smell no fear." She turned to her officers. "What are these creatures?" "We are humans," Lisa said calmly, "and we are not prey." The examination that followed was tense but not hostile. They scanned the humans, took samples of their hair and skin, asked hundreds of questions about their biology and society. They seemed fascinated and disturbed in equal measure. Lisa learned much about them in return. They were a warrior species, dominant in their region of space for over 10,000 years. They were obligate carnivores, meaning they could only eat meat. They hunted, they conquered, they ruled. Weakness was death. Strength was everything. But the most important thing Lisa learned was about their cubs. "Your young," said during one conversation. "Who guards them?" "Everyone," Lisa said. "Parents, grandparents, teachers, neighbors. Our whole society protects children." His eyes narrowed. "You allow non-parents near your young. You allow strangers." "Of course, children need many people to help them grow." This answer seemed to disturb deeply. She turned away and was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was strange. "Cubs are sacred. They are kept in hidden sanctuaries, guarded by warriors who have sworn blood oaths. No outsider has ever seen a cub and lived. It is our deepest law, written in our very blood. Our instincts will not allow it. Any non who approaches our young is a threat. The cubs themselves will attack. They are born with venom in their tails and murder in their hearts." She looked back at Lisa. "This is the way of predators. This is the law of nature. The strong protect their young from all others." Lisa nodded slowly. "Among humans we have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child." "Then your villages must be very trusting," said, "or very foolish." The humans stayed with the fleet for 3 weeks, establishing the first diplomatic relationship between the two species. It was not friendship, not yet. They did not understand humans. They did not understand why these soft, weak creatures showed no fear. They did not understand why humans smiled at danger and laughed at death. But they were curious, and curiosity, Lisa knew, was the first step toward understanding. On the day the Horizon's Edge departed, made an unexpected request. She wished to travel with the humans as a diplomatic observer. She wanted to study them, to understand them, to learn what made them so strange. "Agreed." As the human ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, Lisa stood beside at the observation window. The warrior stared at the stars with her 4 glowing eyes. "You are not what I expected," said quietly. "Neither are you," Lisa replied. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Perhaps that is why we have not killed each other." Lisa smiled again, showing her teeth. "Give it time, we might even become friends." Did not answer, but she did not look away either. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the universe held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when predators and humans truly learned to trust each other. 6 weeks had passed since joined the crew of the Horizon's Edge. She had learned many things about humans in that time. She had learned that they ate plants as well as meat, which she found disgusting. She had learned that they slept for 8 hours every night, which she found wasteful. She had learned that they touched each other constantly, patting shoulders and shaking hands and even embracing, which she found deeply confusing. But the strangest thing she learned was that humans cared about everyone, not just their own families, not just their own species, everyone. She watched Danny spend 3 hours repairing a broken heating unit in the quarters of a junior crew member he barely knew. She watched Amy Tran sit with a homesick ensign and listened to him talk about his mother for an hour. She watched Captain Holt give up his own meal to a crew member who had missed dinner. "Why do you do this?" she asked Lisa one evening. "These people are not your blood, they are not your pack. Why waste resources on them?" Lisa looked up from her research. "Because they need help, that's reason enough." Shook her massive head. "Among my people, such behavior would be seen as weakness. The strong do not serve the weak." "Among my people," Lisa said gently, "the strong have a duty to protect the weak. That's what makes us strong." Did not understand, but she was beginning to suspect that human strength was not the same as strength. It was something different, something she had no word for. The distress signal came at 300 hours, ship time. Was in her quarters when her personal communicator screamed with an emergency alert. The message was in battle code, encrypted and desperate. She decoded it with shaking claws. Sanctuary 7 under attack. Raiders, all adult guardians dead or dying. 47 cubs trapped in lower bunkers. Breaching final defenses. Request immediate assistance. Please, please, our children. Roared. The sound shook the walls of her quarters and brought running with his weapon drawn. What happened? He demanded. Could barely speak. Her whole body was trembling with rage and fear and something close to despair. They have attacked a breeding sanctuary. Cubs. 47 cubs are trapped. The adults are dead. We'll take them. Take them where? For what? Fighting pits. His voice was hollow. They capture young predators and force them to fight for entertainment. They prize cubs because we are dangerous even as infants. Our children will be tortured, drugged, made to kill each other for the amusement of crowds. His face went pale, then hard. Where is this sanctuary? A moon, 17 hours from here at maximum speed. And where is the nearest fleet? Closed her eyes. 3 days away. They will not arrive in time. They will be gone in hours. They will take the cubs and vanish into the dark spaces between stars. We will never find them. Was already moving toward the bridge. Come on. Captain Holt listened to his report without interruption. His face was calm, but his eyes were not. When she finished, he turned to his navigation officer. How fast can we get there? 9 hours at emergency speed, sir, but it will burn out 2 of our engines. Do it. Stared at him. Captain, you do not understand. These are cubs. They are not like your children. They are born with venom and claws. Their instincts tell them to kill anything that is not. If your people try to rescue them, the cubs will attack. They cannot help it. It is their nature. Met her gaze steadily. Then we'll be careful. Careful? His voice rose. Captain, I have seen adult warriors die from cub venom. A single scratch from their claws can cause infection that kills within days. Your people are soft. They have no scales, no protection. The cubs will tear them apart. Then we'll wear gloves. Turned to his crew. Danny, Amy, you're with me on the rescue team. Everyone else, prepare the ship for emergency medical operations. We're going to have a lot of scared kids on board soon. Lisa stepped forward. I should go too. I know more about physiology than anyone. No, said, I need you here coordinating. You'll be more useful on the ship. He looked at, you're coming with us. The cubs might respond better if they see one of their own. Nodded slowly. She still did not understand why these humans were willing to risk their lives for children of another species. But she was grateful, more grateful than she could express. The 9-hour journey was the longest of life. She paced the corridors of the human ship, unable to rest, unable to eat. Every minute that passed was another minute that had to breach the bunkers, another minute closer to losing 47 cubs forever. The humans worked around her, preparing for the mission, checked and rechecked his weapons. Danny modified their protective suits to resist acid and venom. Amy prepared medical supplies, researching pediatric care from the ship's database. Ran simulations of the landing and evacuation. They were afraid, could smell it on them. But they did not stop. They did not turn back. They prepared to walk into a battle they could not win, to save children who would try to kill them, for no reason except that children were in danger. Why? Finally asked Danny. Why do you do this? You owe nothing to my people. You owe nothing to these cubs. If you die in this rescue, no one will thank you. Your sacrifice will mean nothing to the universe. Danny looked up from his work. He was young, this human, barely 30 years old. He had a kind face and gentle hands, hands that built and repaired rather than destroyed. My grandmother used to tell me something, he said. She said that the measure of a person isn't what they do for people who can pay them back. It's what they do for people who can't. He shrugged. Those cubs can't pay us back. They can't even understand what we're doing for them, but they need help, so we help. Stared at him for a long moment. Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman. She was. She died when I was 12. but I still remember everything she taught me. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the moon's gravity well. Below them, the sanctuary was burning. Ships surrounded it like flies on a corpse. Weapon fire lit up the thin atmosphere. His voice came over the intercom. All rescue team members report to the shuttle bay. We launch in 5 minutes. Walked toward the shuttle bay. Beside her, the humans checked their weapons and tightened their armor. They were still afraid, but there was something else in their eyes now, something hard, something determined. "You are strange creatures," said quietly. Amy smiled at her. "We get that a lot." The shuttle doors opened. The burning moon waited below. And for the first time in her long life placed her trust in creatures who were not her own kind. The shuttle screamed through the thin atmosphere of the moon, weaving between weapon fire. Cole gripped the controls with white knuckles, his jaw tight with concentration. Behind him, the rescue team held on as the small craft shook and rattled. "Landing zone is hot," called out. "Ground forces are everywhere. I can get us within 200 meters of the bunker entrance, but you'll have to fight your way in." "Understood," said. He was calm, his voice steady. He had been a soldier for 20 years before joining the Horizon's Edge. He had seen combat before, but never like this. Never against an enemy that outnumbered them 10-1. Never for stakes this high. The shuttle hit the ground hard. The doors opened before the engines had fully stopped. "Go, go, go," shouted. They ran into hell. There were creatures 7 feet tall with 4 arms and hard shells that could stop most small weapons' fire. They moved in swarms, communicating through clicks and hisses. They were slavers, pirates, the worst kind of predators. They did not kill for food or territory. They killed for profit. They killed for fun. Led the charge, his weapon spitting fire. Danny was right behind him, covering their flank. Amy stayed in the middle of the group, her medical kit on her back, brought up the rear, her massive body shielding the humans from attacks behind them. They killed 12 in the first 30 seconds, but more were coming, always more. "The bunker entrance is ahead," roared, "through that door." The door was heavy metal, sealed from the inside. Danny dropped to his knees and pulled out his tools. "I can get it open. Cover me." And formed a defensive line. They kept coming, wave after wave, their weapons flashing in the smoke-filled air. Amy pulled a wounded Danny behind cover when a piece of debris cut his arm open. She bandaged it in seconds, her hands fast and sure. "Done," Danny shouted. The door groaned and swung open. They piled through just as a grenade landed where they had been standing. The explosion shook the walls. Inside the sanctuary was a maze of corridors and rooms. Bodies lay everywhere. Adults, dead at their posts, their scales torn and burned. They had fought to the last breath. They had died protecting their young. Made a sound deep in her throat. It was not a roar. It was something worse, something broken. "We have to keep moving," said gently. "Which way to the cubs?" Forced herself to focus. "Down. The bunkers are in the lowest level. The cubs will be there behind the final security door." They descended through the burning sanctuary. Twice they encountered patrols. Twice they fought through them, leaving alien bodies in their wake. Danny took a wound to his leg during the second fight. He refused to stop. "I can walk," he said through gritted teeth. "Keep going." The final security door was massive, designed to withstand siege weapons. They had been trying to cut through it with plasma torches. They had almost succeeded. A few more minutes and they would have been through. Killed the torchbearer with a shot to the head. Danny limped to the door controls. "Standard encryption," he muttered. "Give me a minute." That minute felt like a year. Stood beside the door, her claws digging into the metal. On the other side she could hear them. The cubs, 47 voices crying and hissing and growling. They were scared. They were alone. They had heard their guardians die. The door opened. The bunker beyond was dark. The emergency lights had failed hours ago. In the shadows, 47 pairs of eyes glowed like copper coins. The cubs were huddled in the far corner, pressed against the wall. The oldest could not have been more than 5 years old. The youngest was barely able to walk. They saw the humans and began to hiss. Small bodies tensed. Tiny tails rose, venom glands swelling. Even the youngest cub bared its teeth, ready to fight, ready to die. "Stay back," warned the humans. "They will attack." But Amy did not stay back. She stepped forward slowly, her hands open and empty. She lowered herself to the ground, making herself small. When she spoke, her voice was soft, like a song, like a lullaby. "Hello, little ones, we're here to help. We're not going to hurt you, we're friends." The cubs did not understand her words, but they understood something else. They understood her voice. They understood her posture. They understood that this strange creature, this soft thing with no claws and no fangs, was not a threat. One cub stopped hissing, then another, then another. Amy kept talking, kept singing, kept being gentle. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a ration bar. She broke it into pieces and tossed one toward the nearest cub. The cub sniffed it, then ate it. Its tail lowered. "That's it," Amy whispered. "That's a good boy. We're going to get you out of here." One by one, the cubs began to relax. Some approached the humans cautiously, sniffing their strange scent. Danny, despite his wounded leg, knelt down and let a cub examine his face. The cub's claws traced his cheek, careful, curious. "Hey there, little guy," Danny said. "You're going to be okay." The cub made a sound, not a hiss, not a growl, a chirp, a sound of trust. Watched in disbelief. This was impossible. This broke every law of nature. Cubs did not trust strangers. Cubs did not allow themselves to be touched by none. Cubs killed anything that was not their own kind. But these cubs were climbing into human arms. They were pressing their faces against human chests. They were seeking comfort from creatures who should have been nothing but prey. Danny lifted 3 cubs at once, their small bodies clinging to his arms. Their venomous tails wrapped around his wrists, but they did not sting. They held on like they were afraid to let go. The hardened soldier had a tiny cub sleeping in his tactical vest. It had crawled in there on its own and refused to come out. Amy had the smallest cub in her arms. It was weak, malnourished, barely breathing. She held it against her heart and it nuzzled closer, seeking warmth. "We need to go," said. "More are coming." They gathered the cubs as quickly as they could. Some humans carried 2 or 3. Some cubs walked on their own, following the humans like ducklings following their mother. Carried as many as she could, but the cubs seemed just as comfortable with the humans. As they began the long climb back to the surface, Amy looked down at the small cub in her arms. It was looking back at her with wide, trusting eyes. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I've got you. Nothing is going to hurt you ever again." The cub chirped softly and closed its eyes. And walking beside them felt something shift in her understanding of the universe. These humans were not prey. They were not predators. They were something else entirely, something that had no word for. They were protectors, not of their own kind, of everyone. It was terrifying, it was beautiful, it was impossible. And yet here it was, happening right in front of her eyes. They did not make it to the surface. They had brought reinforcements. Hundreds of them now swarmed the upper levels of the sanctuary, cutting off every escape route. His voice crackled over the radio, tight with frustration. "Captain, I can see them from the shuttle. There's too many. If you try to break through, they'll cut you down before you get within 50 meters of the landing zone." His voice responded from the horizon's edge, orbiting high above. "What about alternative extraction points?" "Negative, they've got the whole area surrounded. We need backup." "The fleet is still 2 days out. Can you hold that long?" Looked at the small army of between them and freedom. He looked at the wounded among their group. He looked at the 47 cubs who were depending on them. "We don't have a choice," he said. They retreated to the lower tunnels. The sanctuary's underground network was vast, a maze of corridors and chambers carved into the moon's bedrock. They had built it to be defensible, to protect their most precious treasure. Now that defense would have to serve a different purpose. They found a chamber deep underground, far from the patrols. It was dark and cold, but it was safe. For now. "We wait here," said. "We hold this position until the fleet arrives." 18 hours. They had to survive for 18 hours. The humans organized quickly, set up defensive positions at every entrance to their hideout. Danny, despite his wounded leg, rigged early warning systems from salvaged parts, stayed with the shuttle, ready to extract them the moment the skis were clear. But it was Amy who worked hardest. The cubs were terrified. They had seen their guardians die. They had been trapped in darkness for hours. Some were wounded. Some were sick. All of them were hungry and scared and confused. Amy moved among them like a gentle ghost. She cleaned wounds and set broken bones. She distributed ration bars and water. She sang songs in a soft voice, human lullabies that the cubs did not understand but somehow found comforting. One cub had a deep cut on its side, infected and swollen. Amy spent an hour cleaning and stitching the wound while the cub watched her with wide eyes. It did not struggle. It did not try to bite. It lay still and trusted her completely. "You're very brave," Amy told it when she finished. "You're going to be fine." The cub chirped and pressed its head against her hand. Watched all of this from the shadows. She had never seen anything like it. Cubs were difficult patients even for their own kind. They bit and scratched and fought against any medical treatment. They were wild things, ruled by instinct, incapable of understanding that pain could lead to healing. But these cubs were different with the humans. They were calm, they were patient, they trusted. "How do you do this?" asked Amy during a quiet moment. Amy looked up from the cub she was feeding. "Do what?" "Make them trust you. Our cubs do not trust strangers. They cannot. It is in their blood, in their bones. Every instinct tells them that you are a threat, but they look at you like you are their mother." Amy smiled, tired but warm. "Maybe it's because we don't see them as threats either. Animals can sense fear. They can sense hostility, but they can also sense kindness." She stroked the cub's head gently. "We're not afraid of them. We're not trying to hurt them. We just want to help. Maybe they can feel that." "But how? How can they feel something that goes against their very nature?" Amy thought about this for a long moment. "When I was a little girl, I had a dog. He was a rescue, abused by his previous owners. He was terrified of everyone. He bit anyone who came near him. The shelter said he was too dangerous to adopt, but my mother saw something in him. She brought him home and spent months just sitting with him, talking to him, letting him know he was safe." Amy's eyes grew distant, remembering. "One day, he climbed into her lap and fell asleep. After that, he was the sweetest dog you ever met. He just needed someone to show him that not everyone wanted to hurt him." She looked at, "Maybe these cubs are the same. Maybe they just needed someone to show them that not all strangers are enemies." The hours passed slowly. The searched the upper levels, moving ever closer to their hiding place. The humans took turns on watch, weapons ready, eyes scanning the darkness. The cubs slept in piles, curled around each other and around the humans who had saved them. The smallest cub, the one Amy had carried from the bunker, refused to leave her side. It followed her everywhere, its tiny claws clicking on the stone floor. When Amy slept, the cub curled against her chest, its head tucked under her chin, and it purred. Heard the sound and froze. Purring was sacred among the. It was a sound that cubs made only with their biological parents, a sound of absolute trust and safety. No cub had ever purred for a non. It was considered impossible. But there it was, filling the dark chamber like a small miracle. At the 12-hour mark, they found them. A patrol stumbled onto one of Danny's warning systems. The alarm screamed through the tunnels. Was on his feet instantly, weapon raised. "They're coming, everyone stay calm." They poured into the corridor leading to their chamber. There were 30 of them at least, heavily armed, hungry for blood. Between them and the cubs stood 2 humans and Danny. "You should run," told Danny. "Your leg is still wounded, you can't fight." Danny checked his weapon and stood his ground. "Neither can you, not alone." "Danny." "Not one of them gets past us," Danny said. His voice was quiet, but there was iron in it. "Not one." They attacked. The battle was brutal, and Danny fought like men possessed, their weapons firing in endless streams. Fell by the dozen, but more kept coming. Danny took a hit to his already wounded leg and went down. He kept shooting from the ground. Stood over him, protecting him, refusing to retreat even as they pressed closer and closer. A blade caught his arm, cutting deep. He did not even seem to feel it. Behind them, Amy shielded the cubs with her own body. Stood at the last line of defense, her claws ready, her body between the enemy and the young ones she had sworn to protect. Just when it seemed that would overwhelm them, the radio crackled to life. "Third Fleet to human vessel. We have arrived ahead of schedule. Prepare for immediate fire support." The ceiling above the forces exploded. Warriors dropped through the breach, weapons blazing, roaring their battle cries. The lines shattered. Those who did not die fled into the darkness. Sagged against the wall, it was over. It was finally over. Lowered his weapon and looked at Danny. "You okay?" Danny laughed weakly. "Define okay." Amy rushed to their side, already pulling out medical supplies. The small cub followed her, chirping with concern, as if it understood that these humans were hurt. Above them, the fleet filled the sky. Help had arrived. The cubs were safe. And in the dark chamber beneath the moon's surface, the humans and the cubs and one old warrior all waited together for the dawn. The fleet descended upon them like the wrath of angry gods. Within hours, every raider ship was burning wreckage. The slavers who tried to escape were hunted down. Those who surrendered were shown no mercy. For attacking a breeding sanctuary, for threatening cubs, there could be no forgiveness. But did not care about the battle above. She cared only about the chamber below, where 47 cubs waited with the humans who had saved them. She led the rescue party down through the ruined sanctuary. Behind her came the War Mother of the Fifth Fleet, a massive female named, along with a dozen of the most senior warriors in the Dominion. They had come expecting to recover bodies. They had come expecting tragedy. They were not prepared for what they found. The humans were sitting among the cubs, not guarding them from a distance, not watching them with weapons ready, sitting with them, holding them. Some of the cubs were sleeping in human arms. Others were playing with human fingers, batting at them like toys. The smallest cub, a tiny female that could not have been more than a few months old, was curled in Amy's lap, purring. The warriors stopped in their tracks, made a sound that was half roar, half gasp. "What is this?" Stepped forward. "This is what humans do. This is what they are." But the cubs should have killed them. The cubs should have, trailed off, unable to finish. She was staring at a human male, the one called Danny, who had 3 cubs climbing over his shoulders and back. His leg was wrapped in bloody bandages. His face was lined with exhaustion, but he was smiling. "Hey there," Danny said to the nearest warrior. "You guys are a little late, but I guess better late than never, right?" The warrior did not answer. He was too busy staring at the cub that was tugging on Danny's ear. The cubs began to notice the new arrivals. Some recognized their own kind and ran toward them, chirping and crying. Adults dropped to their knees to receive them, their fierce faces softening into something like tenderness. But other cubs hesitated. They looked at the humans, then at the uncertain. A few actually moved closer to the humans as if for protection. One cub, a young male with dark scales, pressed himself against leg. The human soldier looked down at him with gentle eyes. "It's okay, buddy. Those are your people. They're going to take care of you now." The cub did not move. He stayed pressed against leg until a female approached slowly, carefully. She made soft sounds in the back of her throat, the sounds a mother makes to a frightened child. The cub looked up at one last time. Nodded, "Go on, it's okay." The cub chirped softly, then ran to the female and buried his face in her scales. One by one, the cubs were reunited with their own kind. But many looked back. Many paused to press their heads against human hands in farewell. They were too young to understand what had happened, too young to know that they had witnessed something impossible, but they knew enough to say goodbye. The smallest cub was the last to leave. She had refused to move from Amy's lap, her tiny claws gripping the human's uniform. When approached, the cub actually hissed at her. "She does not want to go," said astonished. Amy stroked the cub's head gently. "It's okay, little one, is a friend. She's going to take you somewhere safe." The cub looked up at Amy with those wide, trusting eyes. She made a small sound, the same chirping noise she had made when Amy first picked her up in the bunker. Then slowly, she released her grip and allowed to lift her away. But even as held her, the cub kept looking back at Amy. Approached Dr. Lisa, who had come down with the rescue party to coordinate. The War Mother's 4 eyes studied the human with an expression that was hard to read. 47 cubs, said, all alive, all unharmed. She looked at the wounded humans, at Danny's bloody leg, at sliced arm. Your people risked their lives for children of another species, children who should have attacked them on sight. Why? Lisa considered the question. It was the same question had asked weeks ago on the bridge of the horizon's edge. It was the question every seemed to ask when they encountered humans. Because they were children, Lisa said simply. Because they needed help, because we could help. That's all the reason we need. Shook her massive head. This is not how predators behave. This is not how nature works. The strong protect their own. They do not sacrifice for strangers. Maybe humans are not predators, Lisa said. Maybe we are something else. What are you? Lisa smiled. I'm not sure we have a word for it, but I think it might be the most important thing in the universe. Stepped forward, still holding the small cub. I have watched these humans for many weeks. I have seen them care for each other, for strangers, for creatures they have no reason to help. I have seen them walk into certain death to save children who would have killed them if their instincts had not been by something stronger. She looked at Amy, at Danny, I do not know what humans are, but I know what they do. They protect, they nurture, they love. She held up the small cub, and somehow, against all reason, our children have recognized that. Our children, who are born to fear all outsiders, have looked at these soft, clawless creatures and seen something worth trusting. Her voice grew quiet. Perhaps our children are wiser than we are. There was a long silence. Then did something that no War Mother had ever done in the presence of outsiders. She lowered her head in a gesture of deep respect. You have broken the laws of nature, she said to the humans. You have done the impossible. You have made predators trust prey. She raised her head, and there was wonder in her 4 copper eyes. I do not think the universe will ever be the same. 3 months later, a diplomatic vessel arrived in Earth's solar system. It was the first time any had ever visited the human. It was the first step toward an alliance that would reshape the galaxy. But none of that mattered to Amy Tran. She stood on the landing platform at the main spaceport, her heart pounding. The ship descended through the clouds, its dark hull gleaming in the sunlight. Beside her, Lisa and the others waited. They had all come to see this. The ship landed. The doors opened. Emerged first, her old scales shining with new decorations of honor. Behind her came a small figure, barely 2 feet tall, with dark purple scales and 4 eyes that glowed like copper coins. The small cub saw Amy and froze. For a moment she stood perfectly still, her young mind processing what she was seeing. Then she made a sound, a high chirping cry that echoed across the platform. She ran. Amy dropped to her knees just in time. The cub leaped into her arms, wrapping tiny claws around her neck, pressing a small face against her chest. That purring sound filled the air, the sound of absolute trust, absolute love. "I missed you too," Amy whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I missed you so much." Watched them with something that might have been a smile. Around her, human and officials stood in stunned silence, witnessing something that should have been impossible. A predator cub, in the arms of a human, purring with joy. The old war mother looked up at the Earth sky, so different from the skis of her. Somewhere out there, other species were watching, other predators, other prey. They were all seeing what she was seeing. They were all learning what she had learned. When the universe was at its darkest, humans were the ones who carried the light. Nature had broken its own rules the day predators relied on humans with their cubs, but perhaps thought nature had not broken at all. Perhaps it had simply evolved. Perhaps it had found something better than the old laws of strength and fear. Perhaps it had found love. And perhaps that was the most human thing of all.